The rise in smartphone sales have caused a similar dip in the sales of cameras and DSLRs. As Chase Jarvis once said, the best camera is the one you have with you, and while that's true when you look at convenience, what if you're really looking for great quality? Can a smartphone from today compete with and fulfill the needs of an average consumer? Is it necessary to buy a dedicated camera or DSLR, or will a smartphone be more economical and provide enough quality? This is Sandeep from RevAtlas. Let's find out. This video is brought to you by ZestMoney. Visit zestmoney.in and avail instant loans to buy your favorite smartphone. It's an entirely digital process with high approval rates, seamless EMI payments, and even zero pre-closure charges. But the best part of all is the 0% interest on most merchants, and you don't even need a credit card or a credit score either. The Redmi Note 7 Pro has a half-inch Sony IMX586 sensor with 48 megapixels of resolution, along with a 5 megapixel f2.4 depth sensor. The primary sensor is f1.79 aperture and 0.8 micron pixel size, where the quad-layer array combines information from 4 different pixels into one, thus giving 1.6 micron pixel size. The Nikon D850 has a 45 megapixel sensor with a pixel size of roughly 4.35 microns. We chose the Nikon 14-24mm f2.8 lens for this test and shot it always at 24mm at 2.8. This is the closest we could get to the actual focal length of the Note 7 Pro, but is still a bit wider. Nonetheless, for the sake of this comparison, this will suffice. We'll compare the unprocessed RAW files from the D850 with the shots directly captured on the Note 7 Pro without edit. The Note 7 Pro captures photos in 12 megapixel resolution by default with pixel binning, but you can capture in 48 megapixel mode as well. 48 megapixel mode does not allow for HDR and needs to be toggled using a separate button in auto or pro mode. In terms of size, the photos are roughly 3 times larger when using 48 megapixel mode compared to the 12 megapixel mode. In terms of sharpness and detail, both are very similar, and we have done a similar comparison earlier with the View 20 and D850, where the difference between the D850 and View 20 was much more. But it seems that Xiaomi has done better processing on the Note 7 Pro compared to View 20, as the same sensor is giving better sharpness and detailing. Also, funnily enough, the 48 megapixel image is sharper than the pixel bin 12 megapixel image, but at the cost of higher levels of noise. It shouldn't be that way, since the larger pixel size as a result of pixel binning should give better sharpness, but it doesn't. But yes, the noise is correctly higher on the 48 megapixel still, and in the end, the sharpness difference between the 12 megapixel and 48 megapixel image isn't all that much. Dynamic range is also very good on the Note 7 Pro, as we have also noted on the View 20. Looking at the unprocessed images of the D850 alongside the regular shots of the Note 7 Pro reveal similar results but with darker shadows. It's not too bad, and you can correct it easily in post. HDR mode improves the shadow region, but not by a big margin, since it was good to begin with. The main difference between the two lies in the white balancing. The Note 7 Pro has fairly good white balancing, but it isn't as spot on as the D850, which nails it in every shot. In terms of depth of field, the Nikon D850 definitely does have an advantage here. The larger the sensor, the more pronounced the effects of depth of field are in an image. So even though the f1.79 aperture on the Note 7 Pro may seem like it should be giving a shallower depth of field and more bokeh compared to the f2.8 on the Nikon D850, the Nikon D850 bokeh is still creamier and depth of field is shallower than on the Note 7 Pro. This is even more apparent when you get very close to an object. However, if you use the portrait mode, then the results are still pretty impressive on the Note 7 Pro. The sharpness is very similar, and while the D850 may have more details, the Note 7 Pro is certainly impressive, especially at this price point. You can also notice the edge detection is very good on the Note 7 Pro and is comparable even to the Nikon D850, which actually has a natural blur rather than having to rely on software like the Note 7 Pro. The larger than usual sensor for a smartphone definitely does help here, but Xiaomi has also gone to lengths to ensure a good blurring and good edge detection, which is evident especially in the tiny gap between his body and arms, as well as how it didn't blur out his right ear, even though it doesn't really stand out as much as the other ear. Low light is where the Nikon D850 showcases the difference between a full-frame DSLR and a smartphone. The sensor on the Nikon D850 is able to capture much more light at any given instance, so even with the same shutter speed and ISO, it manages to capture more light. Yes, the aperture is smaller at f2.8, but the sensor is so large that it easily offsets that even with the f1.79 aperture lens on the Note 7 Pro. The camera by default on the Note 7 Pro chooses too high an ISO and leads to extremely noisy photos in low light. You need to make use of the Pro mode or night mode to get truly good results that the sensor is capable of giving. The Nikon D850 shots are better when you have a stable surface or don't need to go long with the exposure. But if you have a long exposure, then shakes are introduced, and unless you have a tripod or something steady, you will have to either go for long exposure or bump up the ISO for a shorter one. Here, the Note 7 Pro can pull a few tricks with the help of night mode. Night mode makes it better, but then again night mode on Xiaomi isn't as aggressive as Huawei's night mode or Google's night sight. So while it did take a better photo than a regular or HDR mode, it can still be improved. We did try a Gcam mod with night sight to see how those images come out, and they were much better than the stock night mode, but still not as good as the D850. The colors are also a bit off with the Gcam mod, and that's something we'll talk about in our detailed camera review. However, if you do have a stable surface, you can make use of the Pro mode and manually use a longer shutter speed along with lower ISO to minimize the noise and get a good frame. You can choose a shutter speed as slow as 32 seconds on Note 7 Pro, so you can keep ISO really low and take a longer shutter speed. Take these two photos from the two cameras and you'll see the photos are now much more comparable, and the Note 7 Pro takes some great photos in low light if you have a stable surface and use Pro mode. Else you need to make use of Gcam mode with night sight. In Pro mode, anything up to ISO 3200 is still very usable with the Note 7 Pro, and there's not too much noise as well. Now let's also take a look at some processed RAW photos from the D850 and similar processing done on the Note 7 Pro photos as well with the RAW filter, and see how they fare. Here the Nikon D850 photos get better, and so do some of the Note 7 Pro shots, but our previous observations are still valid. What this camera comparison basically shows is how smartphones have come a long way in terms of camera capabilities. The Note 7 Pro manages to pack in a camera sensor that is also available in a phone that costs almost 3 times as much, and even more than that, it manages to put up a strong fight against a Pro level DSLR which costs 15 times as much. I'm very impressed by the Note 7 Pro camera so far. At this price point, it's hard to get any better, and unless you're a professional or looking to get any DSLR, the Note 7 Pro should be able to capture much better photos than your point and shoot cameras. If you like this video, please do subscribe to our channel and share our content. Thanks for watching. See you again in the next one. Thanks for watching this video. Make sure you visit zestmoney.in and avail instant loans to purchase your dream products, be it a smartphone, electronics, furniture, and more across Flipkart, Amazon, and more than 100 other partners.